The storm that rolled over the flat plains that morning felt almost theatrical, as if it had arrived precisely to witness what Cole Rathmore intended to do. He rode his truck hard down the dirt road, dust rising behind him like a warning flare. The land around him stretching so wide and empty it made a man feel the truth of his actions echo back at him. He was the wealthiest rancher within 3 counties, heir to a spread so large people joked you could drive across it and still not touch the fence line. But today he wasn't coming as a savior or neighbor. He was coming to collect a debt that had sat unpaid too long, a debt owed by a man now dead. He had told himself this morning that business was business, that mercy had no place where numbers ruled, that allowing one missing payment would invite others to follow. But the certainty that usually powered his decisions felt thin. Today, a faint thread ready to snap if pulled the wrong way. Maybe it was the rumor he'd heard at the feed store, the one whispered low between 2 men who didn't know he was standing behind them. They said the widow of Daniel Bishop had been skipping meals so her children could eat. Said they saw her buy only flour and a single can of beans the past week. Said she still owed on the loan Daniel had taken from Cole before he died. Said the rancher would be here any day to take the land, the house, whatever scraps were left. Cole told himself rumors were made to fill silence. Still, he felt them clinging to him like dust on his boots. When he arrived, he expected anger, expected a defensive woman ready to argue or bargain or slam the door in his face. But what he found stopped him so abruptly that the storm itself seemed to pause. The house leaned like it had grown tired of holding itself up. The porch was missing a board. A single toy, a chipped yellow truck, lay half buried in dirt near the steps. And there, kneeling in the yard with her back to him, was a woman so thin the wind almost lifted her hair like paper. She was picking wild dandelions with slow, deliberate movements, placing them carefully into a small tin bowl. Cole stepped out of the truck, boots crunching, and she startled, spinning around with a breath caught halfway in her throat. Her eyes weren't frightened. They were hollow, as if exhaustion had burned fear away long ago. "Mrs. Bishop," he said. She rose, brushing dirt from her hands, and the tin bowl rattled softly. "If you've come about the loan," she began, voice steady but low. "I know what you want." Her gaze didn't harden or soften, just hovered somewhere, between apology and defiance, like she was too worn down to offer either. A child appeared in the doorway behind her, a thin boy with hair sticking up like dried wheat. Another younger one peeked behind him. A third sat on the floor inside, unmoving except to blink. Cole felt the air thicken. The tin bowl in her hand looked like something out of a nightmare, tiny, empty except for the yellow petals. "You're gathering weeds," he said, hating himself for how obvious it sounded. She stiffened. "Dandelion soup," she replied. "It keeps them from going to bed?" "Hungry." Something in his chest tightened until he could barely breathe. He had expected a struggle, expected complaints, expected anything except this quiet surrender of a woman choosing hunger so her children could stay alive. "Mrs. Bishop," he said again, but his voice had shifted, carrying something he didn't recognize, something raw. The storm crackled above them, promising rain that wouldn't arrive in time to help anything. She lifted her chin as if bracing for the blow. "I know you have every right to take the land," she whispered. Daniel shouldn't have borrowed, but he thought he'd make the payments after the harvest. He thought. Her voice broke only once. She inhaled, steadying herself. "If you take the property, I understand. I only ask you, give us until nightfall to gather our things." Cole opened his mouth to speak, but nothing came. He looked again at the children, then at the woman whose bones showed like the outline of a story carved into parchment. He wanted to look away, but his conscience forced his gaze to stay. He remembered his father's words spoken years before. Don't be the kind of man who walks into a starving home and pretends he doesn't smell the truth. He had built an empire, made decisions his father never could, but in this moment he felt small, completely devastatingly small. "Mrs. Bishop," he began again, forcing breath into lungs that didn't seem to work. "That's not why I'm here." The shock that flickered through her face was painful to watch. She clearly didn't believe him. Why should she? Cole knew the reputation he carried, ruthless, efficient, precise. He was the rancher who didn't bend, the man who came to collect, and he had allowed that image to protect him for years because it made running a giant business easier. But now confronted with 3 children looking like shadows, and a woman holding a bowl of weeds. As if it were treasure, that image felt like something he wanted to bury. He took a step toward her. "I need to see the paperwork inside," he said softly. She hesitated, then nodded, stepping aside. Inside, the house felt colder than the wind. The children watched him with wide eyes, not fearful, just uncertain, as if he was a creature they had never seen before. The youngest clutched a blanket with a hole through the center. Cole removed his hat, feeling suddenly unworthy of wearing it. Indoors, Mrs. Bishop placed the tin bowl on the counter, the metal making a lonely sound. Her hands shook when she opened the drawer to retrieve the loan papers. He had seen thousands of contracts, thousands of signatures, but none hit him the way this did. Daniel Bishop had signed his name confidently, not knowing he wouldn't live to see the next winter. "He meant to pay it," she said quietly. "He meant to make things right." Cole swallowed hard. "I know." She blinked, surprised. "You do?" "Daniel worked for me once," he admitted. "Good man." Not a fast worker, not the strongest, but honest. A faint something, maybe gratitude, softened her expression, but she didn't say anything. Cole set the papers on the table. His hand hovered above them. He knew exactly what he was about to do, and he felt the weight of it like a stone trying to drag him under. He drew a slow breath. He took a pen from his coat pocket, its metal cool, clean, and painfully out of place in this fragile kitchen. Mrs. Bishop watched him, her body held still in a way that suggested she'd forgotten how to hope. Cole pressed the pen to the contract, expecting his signature to feel like a betrayal of every rule he'd built his empire on. Instead, it felt like air returning to a suffocating room. He signed not as a collector, but as a man, refusing to let another family fall into the dirt. "There," he said, sliding the papers toward her. She stared down, brow furrowing. "You renewed the loan?" "No," he said, voice steady. "I erased it." She blinked fast, as if her mind couldn't catch up to the words. You can't just erase a debt like that." "I can," he replied. "And I did." Her hand covered her mouth. One of the children stepped closer, eyes large with confusion. Cole felt the room shift, a sensation like gravity changing direction. "Mrs. Bishop," he said quietly, "your husband worked for me when he was just a kid. Long before you knew him, he looked after my father's cattle like they were his own. When he came to me for that loan, he was desperate and embarrassed. He told me he'd make it right. I believed him, and I still do. But he's gone now. The debt goes with him." She shook her head, tears forming but not falling. Why would you do this?" He didn't have an answer he trusted himself to say aloud, because the truth was tangled: guilt, memory, a sudden fierce understanding that no ledger should decide the fate of 3 starving children, because someone should have helped you sooner, he finally said. She gripped the back of a chair, steadying herself. The storm outside deepened, wind rattling the windows like a reminder that danger had been close, too close. Cole glanced around the room again, noticing how empty the shelves were. The anger he felt wasn't toward her or even toward Daniel. It was toward himself for not coming earlier. "Where's their last proper meal?" he asked. She hesitated. 3 days ago. He closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, resolve hardened in his chest. "Get their shoes," he said. "All of you. We're leaving." Panic flickered across her face. "Leaving? Where?" "My ranch," he said. "I'm not leaving you here to starve in this house while a storm rolls in." She shook her head violently. "No, we can't accept charity. Daniel wouldn't want that." "Daniel isn't here," Cole said gently but firmly. "And this isn't charity. It's responsibility, mine." She stood frozen, children clinging to her legs. He stepped back, giving her space, forcing himself not to rush her. Decision, even though every instinct told him time mattered. Thunder boomed so loud the youngest child whimpered. Cole crouched down to the boy's level. "You scared of storms?" The boy nodded. "Me too," Cole whispered. And somehow that small confession made the child blink in surprise, then lean forward as if drawn by a strange safety. When Cole rose again, Mrs. Bishop was staring at him, confused, frightened but no longer refusing. "Fine," she whispered. Just for tonight. It was enough. They gathered what little they owned, blankets, a few clothes, a cracked picture frame with Daniel smiling from better years. As they stepped outside, wind tugged at their coats. The storm now a full warning of danger. Cole loaded the children into the truck, then helped her climb in. The moment the door shut, she inhaled sharply as if she hadn't breathed indoors. He started the engine. Rain struck the windshield like thrown pebbles. The drive to his ranch took half an hour, but it felt longer. Silent. Thick with a tension neither knew how to break. The children dozed off one by one. Mrs. Bishop stared out the window. Hands knotted tightly in her lap. Cole wanted to speak, to say something that would make her trust that this wasn't pity or performance. But every word he rehearsed sounded wrong. When they reached his long driveway, the ranch lights glowed like a sanctuary, warm, alive. Nothing like the hollow house they'd left behind. One of his ranch hands stepped out, startled at seeing Cole arrive with passengers. "Set up the guest house," Cole ordered. "Heat on beds made, and bring supper from the main kitchen." The ranch hand nodded and rushed off. Mrs. Bishop looked around, overwhelmed. "I don't understand why you're doing all this." "Because I should have checked on you sooner," Cole said. "Because your husband was loyal. Because the world's cruel enough without me adding to it. Pick the reason you like." Her breath trembled, the closest she'd come to crying. He stepped back, letting her gather herself. Inside the guest house, warmth wrapped around them instantly. The children stirred, their eyes widening at the sight of real, clean beds. Cole felt something twist deep inside him, an ache he didn't know he carried. When supper arrived, fresh bread, stew, fruit, the children ate like they weren't sure it was real. Mrs. Bishop tried to hold back, letting them eat first, but Cole slid a bowl toward her. "You need it too," he said softly. She hesitated, then ate. Slowly at first, then faster, as if her body had decided fear could wait. After the dishes were cleared, Cole stood in the doorway. "You're safe here," he said, "for as long as you need." She looked at him, truly looked, as if seeing past the wealthy rancher, the debt collector, the man she thought had come to take everything. And something shifted, small, delicate, but real. "Thank you," she whispered. He didn't trust himself to answer, so he simply nodded and stepped out into the cooling night. The storm was moving on, leaving behind the scent of wet earth and something like renewal. But as Cole walked back toward his main house, he felt the weight of a realization settling slowly, painfully. He hadn't just saved a widow and 3 starving children. He had crossed a line inside himself, a line between duty and compassion, between reputation and humanity. And now that he'd crossed it, he knew one truth with startling clarity. This story wasn't finished. Not even close.